our Facebook Live broadcast today. My name is Cindy Speaker. I have with me as my guest attorney Bill Kinney of Berger and Green, and he's going to talk with us today about a common topic. It affects us all. It's distracted driving. We're going to talk about the dangers of it and how to protect ourselves from this difficult situation. So, Bill, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Cindy.
Yeah, well, Bill, this is our first Facebook Live, so what do you think? Are you a little nervous?
It's a bit peculiar. Go ahead.
Well, I was telling you that I've had all kinds of things happen in this live environment, and you just sometimes one day my Siri on my phone answered one of the questions. It was crazy. So hopefully that won't happen today. I did turn my phone off.
Well, I'd hate to have Apple replace me.
Yeah, right. Well, let's see. First of all, let's welcome our live viewers. If we have live viewers yet, welcome. But even we want to also welcome our replay viewers, because we find that we get a lot of replay viewers, and we're so glad that you take the time to watch this. We encourage you to like it and share it if you find it's something that you think may interest your friends or family members. But right now we're going to jump into the topic. So, Bill, let's talk first of all about what qualifies as distracted driving.
Well, distracted driving covers anything that would keep you from remaining focused on the task of driving. I mean, today we talk an awful lot about texting or using our cell phones when we're driving as being distracted driving. But
Right.
Quite frankly, changing the radio station or just becoming inattentive is distracted driving. And regardless of the cause, it can have catastrophic consequences for people around you as well as yourself.
Yeah, it really can. And unfortunately, I think you see that all too often.
Yeah, we do. We see an awful lot of it. I have several cases where in the police report itself, the driver who's at fault is acknowledging they were distracted by their phone,
Wow.
or they dropped their phone, or they took their eyes off the road. I have one guy admitting he was messing with his phone.
Wow.
So, and the real problem with this, particularly with cell phone use, more so than anything else, is that people have become so accustomed to using their cell phone, it's somewhat of an addiction,
Yeah.
that the accidents we begin to see are unfortunately happening at a high rate of speed and therefore much more catastrophic.
Yeah.
People are more severely injured. Cars have gotten a lot better. They're a lot safer. So oftentimes, absent some kind of quirk in the physics of the accident, low impact accidents don't cause a lot of harm, and the cars survive well. But distracted drivers have a tendency to be distracted at full speed,
Yeah.
flying down a highway that they're accustomed to driving on, and they take their mind off the road, either looking at their phone, changing the radio, or they just get tired.
Yeah.
And those full speed accidents can be horrible
Yeah.
for
Well,
everybody involved.
one of the things, I was driving with somebody, I was a passenger in a vehicle yesterday, and the driver had one of those little, they have all kinds of gadgets now that'll help you prop your phone up right on your dashboard. And
Right.
I'm thinking, I don't know that this is such a good idea. It's almost irresponsible to sell those things, because every time a text comes in, she immediately sees it. And that can't help but distract you.
No, and it is a distraction. You're constantly in this day and age with the electronic devices that we have. When I started out as a lawyer, we were still, faxing stuff was a big deal. Email
Right.
wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now, and
Yeah.
things moved at a slower pace.
Yes.
With electronics, people are have an expectation, quite frankly,
Yeah.
of immediacy, instant gratification. A text comes in, they're actually concerned that if they don't respond timely, the person's going to be offended.
Right.
So these things are a draw away from the very
Yeah.
thing that you need to be focused on when you're driving, which is driving. I have a 16-year-old son, just got his
Okay.
permit, and
Oh,
the thing I told him was, your phone is in your pocket. That's it.
it's good advice.
And there's two rules you need to know of the road. beyond the actual rules, is that you have to do everything you can to drive predictably. And you
Yeah.
have to anticipate and expect everybody about you not to be driving predictably.
Yeah.
When somebody's distracted, their predictability goes out the window, and they're not going to stop when they're supposed to stop, or they're not going to stay in their lane the way they're supposed to, or
Yeah.
they're just going to swerve off the road,
Yeah.
and they're not going to respond to the traffic conditions around them. And
Right.
so, responding, having that stuff up in front of you that is drawing your attention away from the
Yeah.
task at hand can be a huge problem.
It really is. And I think what it was so well stated what you just said, and the advice that you gave your son, I think, is great. Talk a little bit about how we can avoid being impacted by distracted driving, not only as drivers, but also as passengers.
Sure. Well, as a passenger, if you're in a car with somebody, and I want to kind of disavow our viewers of the notion that, it's only young people that are texting and driving.
Right.
That's not the case.
It's not.
I drive north of the city every day on a main thoroughfare, lots of lights, lots of traffic, and all I have to do is look around and see all the people returning from work, and half of them are looking at their phones while
Yeah.
driving. When you're in a car with somebody who's engaged in that behavior, it's in your best interest, obviously, to tell them to knock it off.
Right.
They're putting you at risk.
Yeah.
And if you're a passenger in a vehicle driven by a distracted driver, whatever the distraction is, and that distraction leads to an accident and you're injured, your claim is against that driver. Presumptively, you're in a car with a friend or an associate, and that's the last thing you want is to be making a
Yeah.
claim against them for their poor judgment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a passenger, you need to insist that, if you're going to drive. Give me your phone. I'll read you the texts. You can tell me what to text back. That's if
Yeah.
it's that important.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you said that. That was another one of my questions. So if you're a passenger in the car, the driver has an accident, was distracted, who pays for your injuries? Is it that driver's insurance, your own insurance, health insurance? How does that all work?
So sure, yeah. In Pennsylvania, let's presume it's a Pennsylvania automobile accident. We'll deal with
Okay.
the Pennsylvania law that applies there. Pennsylvania is a no-fault state. So if you have, essentially 3 potential levels of coverage, automobile insurance coverage come into play. The first is where we get the no-fault language in the act. And that first level of coverage is called first-party benefits. It
Okay.
provides a minimum of $5,000 of medical benefits, or really just $5,000 of health insurance to pay for your accident-related injuries. It comes from your own insurance company. So if you're in a friend's car, but you own your own car and you insure it with an insurance company, the insurance on your vehicle, despite the fact you're in your friend's car,
Right.
is going to provide this first level of coverage. If for some reason you don't have your own car, or you don't
Yeah.
live with a family that owns vehicles, you will get that coverage from the vehicle you're occupying.
Okay.
So the second level of coverage that comes into play is that liability. So if your friend was distracted and you let them get away with it, their liability coverage is going to apply, and it's going to pay for your injuries and damages, depending first upon what kind of policy you bought. So let me address something that's very important here. When you buy an automobile policy in Pennsylvania, you can select the full tort or limited tort options.
Right.
If you select limited tort, you get a 20% reduction in your premium, and that's very appealing to people.
Yeah.
In exchange for that 20% reduction in your premium, you give up your right to collect or claim an entire category of damages in any claim you make. So under Pennsylvania law, when you're injured, you have 2 basic categories of damages. You have economic loss, and you have
Right.
a non-economic loss. An economic loss is pretty easy to understand. It includes lost wages, unpaid medical bills, medical liens, things that are economic in nature we can calculate down to the penny.
Right.
Those non-economic damages that you would be prohibited from collecting if you were a limited tort claimant include everything like pain and suffering and scarring and
Okay.
disfigurement and loss of the enjoyment of life. So let's assume in the example we're discussing that the person is a full tort claimant. Okay, so they are not prohibited from making a full claim for their damages. You would make that full claim against a distracted driver if they were at fault for the accident,
I
if their
see.
distraction caused the accident. Of course,
Okay.
I could be a distracted driver. I could be sitting at a red light, waiting for the red light to change, looking at my phone, and get rear-ended. Well, I
Yeah.
was distracted, but that distraction didn't cause the accident.
Right.
That's very different than I'm driving down the highway. I get a text, I go to respond to it,
Right.
and when I look back up, traffic is stopped, and I'm plowing into a line of traffic.
Yeah.
So if the person is at fault, you collect against their liability coverage. And under Pennsylvania law, unfortunately, and this has been true since the 1990s, there's a state minimum policy of what's called a 1530 policy. That is, that there's no more than $15,000 per person in the accident, and no more than $30,000 in the aggregate. So if there was 5 people in the car, all injured by this distracted driver, all 5 of them would be entitled to recover no more than $30,000, and not one of them could recover more than 15 individually.
Wow. Wow.
It's a woefully inadequate coverage.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
plaintiff's bar is working hard in the state legislature to try to increase that to get with the times. I mean, when the auto law was passed, this was the state minimum, and that's over 30, almost 40 years ago now.
Yeah.
So then we get to the third level of coverage, which is essentially uninsured, underinsured. This coverage, again, comes from your own policy.
Okay.
Coverage you buy to protect you in the event that the person who is at fault has one of these state minimum policies or has a policy that is inadequate to cover your damages. It's called
Right.
underinsured coverage. And it's also uninsured coverage in the event, God forbid, that the person who's at fault doesn't have any insurance at all. That level of coverage is elective, and it's important to note that it's very inexpensive.
Yeah.
You should have it because it guards you against these people driving around with woefully inadequate state minimum policies. There's very few claims that I see that end up in a litigation or a claim that are worth less than $15,000.
Yeah.
So those are the coverages that come into play. If you're a passenger in a vehicle that's involved in an accident caused by a distracted driver.
Yeah.
Let me make one more point before you continue, Cindy. You know, it's important to remember in this limited tort, full tort selection, it's very appealing to get a 20% reduction in your premium. You know, most people are working for every penny they get, and every penny counts. And so getting a reduction is important, but it's also important to keep in mind that if you own a vehicle registered in Pennsylvania that's uninsured, the state punishes you. Let me repeat that, punishes you by making you a limited tort claimant. So that 20% reduction in the premium is really a swap out for a punishment.
Wow. Interesting. And, you know, you talked about the limited tort being about 20% less than the full tort, which based on what you just told us, it's kind of a no-brainer decision to go with full tort. Let me ask you also, you said that uninsured and underinsured is relatively inexpensive. Can you give us an idea in terms of?
We're talking, generally when I look at a policy, all policies are based upon the risks of the insured. So somebody with a large accident record is going to pay a premium regardless. But for the general public who's had 1 or 2 accidents in their lifetime, you know, small fender benders,
right?
You know, we're talking about $25 to $50 for underinsured coverage.
Wow.
And a 20% reduction in your premium over the lifetime of the policy on a one vehicle policy, maybe $200 on a year's policy, maybe $400, and that's spread out over 12 months. I think that, you know, you divide that by 12, that's not that much a month.
Yeah. And
it's well worth keeping in mind that you're actually taking a punishment to get that reduction.
Yeah.
It's not a fair trade.
Yeah, it's great information. And really, I think a lot of people, I know when I always carry full tort now, but I mean, in my younger years, I limited tort just because I really didn't know the difference. And I thought if I can save the 20%, I think a lot of people don't realize how important this decision is.
No, they don't.
It's really important.
It's very important. You know, we get a lot of calls here at Berger and Green. And the number of people that I talk to that I say, well, do you have a limited tort or full tort policy? I get two kind of generic answers. Well, I have a full coverage. Well, that's
Yes.
not what I'm talking about.
Right. Right.
And I
Right.
explain to them limited tort and full tort, and they're dumbfounded.
Yeah.
And then sometimes people tell me, yeah, I'm limited tort, and they don't understand what it meant. And let's say they just had a soft tissue injury, they have whiplash, and they go to physical therapy for 2 months or
Yeah.
3 months. It's an interference in their life. It's
Right.
painful. It keeps them from sleeping. It keeps them from enjoying their life. But it's not a serious impairment of bodily function, or as
Yeah.
I like to tell my clients, there's no permanency to it that
Right.
would warrant you being treated as a full tort claimant, even though you're
Wow.
limited tort.
Wow.
And consequently, these people, they call and I say, well, unfortunately, given the nature of your injuries, I don't think you can really make a recovery that I can add value to,
Yeah.
because you can only recover your economic loss. You can send them
Wow.
your lost wages, your copays, your deductibles, any out of pockets, and they'll pay you for that if
Yeah.
they've accepted liability.
Yeah. Bill, who's most at risk for these distracted driving accidents? Do you see any statistically significance in certain demographics?
No, I don't.
Okay, it's across the
Everybody.
board.
I mean, it's across the
Across the
board.
board. Yeah.
Distraction
Yeah.
is chaos, and
Yeah.
chaos doesn't differentiate.
Yeah.
It will hit. It'll hit a school bus, and it will hit grandma turning into a parking lot
Right.
to get her weekly groceries. It
Right.
doesn't care. So no, I don't see a demographic of
Yeah.
victims.
Yeah.
Now, demographically speaking, and as I alluded to earlier, you would assume that younger people who were more, quote, tech savvy, though I'm on Facebook Live, so give me credit for that.
Right.
So, you would assume that they would be the ones more likely to be involved in and causing distracted
Yeah.
driving accidents. That's just not the case.
Yeah. Interesting.
Statistically speaking, it's usually the people who are between 30 and 45
How about
are
that?
causing these accidents.
How about
And
that?
I would think that would be really a function of they're not as adept. They're not as savvy with their tech.
Yeah, that's right.
They're not responding as quickly. You
Yeah.
can only look at, my children. Like I said, I have a son who's 16. I send a text and it could take me 10 minutes. He sends a text and it's a 3-second endeavor.
Right.
So there's all sorts of factors, but it's not what you would expect.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's
how do you see?
oftentimes, actually, Cindy,
Yeah.
in the cases I've seen, it's more often than not working people who are responding to working texts. They
Yeah.
have jobs that take them out on the road, and they're not just putting it aside and getting point A to point B. They're
Yeah.
trying to do too many things at one time.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's a distraction. It's taking you away from the task at hand and exposes you and everybody on the road to a great deal of risk.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. How is distracted driving impacting accidents in the Pittsburgh area? What are you noticing there?
I wouldn't have anything to compare it to.
Okay.
Most of my practice is in Western Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I see more distracted driving in the urban areas rather than in the countries.
That makes sense. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Country folk, they're used to driving longer
Yeah.
distances to get to things.
Yeah.
They're not involved in as much traffic. I think that there's less of a tendency to think that the stop and go of traffic, which lends itself to, well, I'm stopped, I'll look, and then traffic picks up and you continue with that looking despite the traffic going.
Yeah.
That's kind of my personal experience. I don't have any
Okay.
kind of statistical analysis on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And Bill, if someone is in an accident that involves distracted driving, what should they do?
Whether it's distracted driving or any kind of accident, the first thing you need to do is you need to contact a lawyer. That sounds self-serving, and I know that as a lawyer. But I'm telling you, the first thing you need to do is contact a lawyer. If you're listening to this broadcast, I've probably told you things you were unaware of.
Yeah.
It's that lack of awareness that could lead you into trouble.
Yeah.
The insurance company, even your own, is not necessarily on your side, like some
Right.
claim. They're in the business of mitigating their costs. And if you don't get an attorney involved at the outset, you can compromise your claim unwittingly because they can be kind of sneaky about it.
Right.
Look, the fact of the matter is this. I have people who 3 weeks after an accident call me because they're frustrated, because they're not getting anywhere. They're not getting anywhere with the insurance company, or the insurance company is taking an unreasonable stand. And, I get the name of the adjuster from that person, and they retain us, and I contact that adjuster. And the first thing out of that adjuster's mouth is, well, this claim is now going to be handled by somebody else.
How about
because
that?
They have adjusters for consumers who are unrepresented, and then they have adjusters that deal with us.
Interesting.
Because they know they can't get away with as much.
Right. That makes sense.
After you call a lawyer, and this is assuming, of course, you've gotten the initial medical treatment you needed. You were taken by ambulance from the scene. Obviously, as soon as you're able, you're going to contact a lawyer before you talk to any insurance company. You're also going to go about the business of collecting what evidence you can collect. So you want to make sure that you take any pictures of your vehicle, even take pictures of the scene if, for instance, the dynamics of the accident are at issue. That contemporaneous collection is really important. Skid marks are more important than you can imagine. It really kind of defines the way accidents happen. It can really lead to a conclusion about who's at fault. So beyond that, you should, after collecting evidence and contacting a lawyer, if you retain that lawyer, and if you retain a lawyer from Berger and Green, certainly, you'll be in the position of being able to focus on your treatment.
Absolutely.
Focus on getting better. Focus on getting your life back on track.
Right.
And the attorneys here at Berger and Green, including myself, will do everything else. We will take care of it all and keep you informed. So you don't have to worry about it. That's how we're going to earn our fee. We're going to earn our fee because you're going to be able to put aside all the concerns about insurance company and money and all that sort of thing. Let us focus on sorting it all out and establishing exactly what it is you can and cannot recover.
Yeah. These are very complex issues. They really are. And I think we see a lot of that by what you told us today. I mean, there's a lot of complexity here. And Bill, if someone does want to speak to you or someone in your office, how's the best way to reach you?
Well, they can call us at our toll-free number, which is 1-800-999-2626.
Okay.
And or they can reach out to us on the web at www.bergerandgreen.com.
Okay. Very good.
If you type in personal injury in Pittsburgh, you're going to find us. We've been here a long time. We've been doing this a long time. We know what we're doing. And we've helped an awful lot of people. So that's how they're going to find us.
Excellent. Well, listen, Bill, thanks a lot for your time today. Good talking to you.
You too, Cindy. You take care. And go Pens.
I look forward. What's that?
Go Pens.
Yeah. Well, once again, let me just say to our viewers, our live viewers, our replay viewers, thanks for joining us. Please like and share this information. I think you'll agree it was very valuable information today. So
thanks, Cindy.
Okay. Bye now.